I arrived at my sister's place. Her house tucked at the end of a peaceful lane felt welcoming, a space where memories seemed to hang in the air. Her arms wrapped around me in a familiar hug. "It's been too long," she said warmly, guiding me inside. The days passed gently at first. Her son, my nephew Ethan, had just moved back home after completing graduate school, and his return changed the atmosphere in quiet, subtle ways. At 25, he was no longer the kid I remembered, but a man now, one who carried himself with quiet ease and a natural smile. We spent time together comfortably, sitting on the porch, sharing conversations. He would speak of his journeys, the places he had wandered, and the people he had crossed paths with. His voice was reflective, each sentence measured, and I found myself completely drawn in by the way he spoke. One evening, as the sky shifted to a soft lavender, he told a silly story about getting lost in Italy, and I laughed harder than I had in ages. His eyes softened as he watched me. "I'm glad you're here," he said, his voice hushed. Something stirred inside me, warmth and confusion too. I quickly pushed the thought away. As the days passed, I started noticing small things, little details that made my heart beat quicker. How he'd make my coffee exactly the way I liked without asking. How he'd gently place a blanket over my shoulders if I nodded off on the couch. How his eyes lingered for just a heartbeat longer when we looked at each other. One afternoon, I struggled with a tight jar in the kitchen. Ethan stepped in behind me, reaching over to help. His hand brushed mine, and for a moment, time paused. "Got it," he said with a grin. But I barely heard him. My mind was spiraling. I scolded myself for how I felt. He was family. This couldn't happen. That night, I couldn't sleep, replaying moments in my head. I reminded myself that I felt safe with him, that closeness was normal in a family. But deep down, something else whispered inside me, something I wasn't ready to admit. The next evening, we sat outside again. The scent of rain lingered in the breeze. He handed me a cup of tea, steam curling into the air. "You okay?" he asked, voice low. I nodded, but the words stuck in my chest. I wanted to tell him everything, the feelings I didn't understand, the way something in me leaned toward him, but I stayed quiet. I smiled and took a sip, pretending nothing had changed. But I knew everything had. Morning sunlight poured through the window as I sat at the dining table, stirring my coffee without thought. My mind circled back to how his hand had touched mine. I told myself it was silly to dwell on it, but the memory lingered. He walked in, casually dressed in a snug shirt and jeans, sleeves pushed up. I noticed the way his arms moved as he walked. "You're quiet today," he said, pulling out the chair next to me. "Just thinking," I murmured, forcing a smile. But I couldn't stop myself from noticing him. The way his voice softened when he spoke to me. The way his eyes didn't look away when they should have. That afternoon, I offered to help him in the kitchen. He was slicing vegetables when I entered. "Need a hand?" I asked. He grinned. "Sure, but I take my cooking very seriously." His teasing tone made me laugh, and for a while it felt easy again. We moved in sync, passing tools, trading jokes, bumping elbows in the tight space. At one point, we both reached for a cutting board. Our fingers touched, and neither of us moved. "Sorry," I said quickly, stepping back. He smiled, but there was something thoughtful in his eyes. That night we sat in the living room watching a movie. The storm outside rattled the panes, and I pulled a blanket around me. Without a word, he shifted closer, wrapping an arm over my shoulders. His warmth soaked into me, and my heart pounded. I should have pulled away, but I didn't. I leaned in, my head resting lightly on him. I told myself it was just comfort on a rainy night. But the way his fingers traced soft patterns on my arm told a different story. The next morning, I tried to keep some distance. I stayed upstairs, pretending to be busy. But when he called me down for lunch, I couldn't say no. We sat in quiet for a bit before he said, "You've been avoiding me." I froze. I began. But the words dissolved. "You don't have to explain," he said, eyes locked on mine. "I get it." But he didn't. Not fully. Because what I was feeling scared me more than I could explain. That evening, another storm swept in. The lights flickered and went out. He lit a few candles, setting one on the table. He sat across from me, the glow casting dancing shadows on his face. "You've changed," he said quietly, his gaze steady. "I guess," I whispered. He leaned in, forearms resting on his knees. "You've been on my mind," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "And I know I shouldn't feel like this, but—" He trailed off like he wasn't sure he should say more. My heart pounded. I knew I should end it here, stop things before they went somewhere we couldn't return from. But I didn't. I held his eyes. "I feel it too," I whispered. He let out a slow breath like he had been holding it. It felt like something irreversible might happen. But then he sat back, running a hand through his hair. "This isn't right," he murmured. "Your family. I don't want to hurt you." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I know." A long pause stretched between us, tense, unsure. "I think I should leave early," I said finally. He didn't argue, just nodded. "Maybe that's best." The morning I was set to leave arrived too quickly. I packed slowly, my thoughts tangled. Before leaving, I sat at the kitchen table and scribbled a note. I don't know what this feeling means, or if I should be feeling it, but I know it's real. And I know you feel it too. I'm leaving because it's the right thing, but I'll always keep these memories close. Thank you for making me feel safe, cared for, and truly seen. I placed the note on the counter and walked away. I hadn't even reached the third block when my phone rang. His name lit up the screen. I stopped. "I read your note," he said, voice tight. "And I need you to know you're not alone in this." Tears stung my eyes. His next words were steady. "I care about you too much to let this become something we regret." "I understand," I whispered. "You're important to me," he said. "That doesn't have to change just because you're going." A bittersweet smile touched my lips. "Take care of yourself." "You too. And if you ever need me, I'll be here." I ended the call and breathed deep. Some connections aren't meant to become more, but they're still meant to be remembered, cherished,